You can't think outside of that box. So let's go look at what they were given. They were given in 2017, distance learners, sorry, I forgot. We're going through 2017, but I don't have copies of it. So you can just watch through here. So it says, let f be a function defined by f of x equals, and they just give you a nice, fairly, seemingly friendly function, correct? For part A, that is not BC. Read it. You should 100%, again, if you can tackle some of the weird stuff, you're going to get a 5. If you can't tackle the norm stuff, you won't get a 3. A isn't weird at all. What is the slope of a tangent line? Derivative. How do we take the derivative of that? Yeah, you could do quotient rule, low d high minus high d low, draw a line and square below. Or, because the top's a constant, you can write it as 3 times 2x squared minus 7x plus 5 to the negative first and chain rule it. So go do that. See if you could get those 2 points. We'll go look at the national average, but I'm going to show you what they complained about. They shouldn't be complaining about part A. This one, they complained about the potato big time. Like every kid came back the next day and they're like, what was up with the potato problem? And then this part. And you're supposed to find it, and this was not calculator active, so you wouldn't have been able to hop on it. Be very careful with that derivative, because if it's not correct, it's going to affect the letter B as well. So watch your arithmetic. Remember, you don't have to do all the arithmetic once it's all numerical. So you might want to just fail once you have it all. Or do it all the way, but then be very, very, very careful. All right, so for part A only, once you do, whether you do product rule, quotient rule or chain rule, on the top, once you plug in, you should have a negative 3 times 12 minus 7, because it was 4x, all over, and then it was this squared, because it ended up being to the negative second, or you did squared below, whatever rule you used for your derivative, and it was an 18 minus 21 plus 5 squared. That's accepted. All right? And why would I suggest to leave it like that? So you don't lose, once it goes all numerical. All right? You can leave it. We're so used to simplifying because we need to on multiple choice that kids sometimes forget about that. If they want you to know how to simplify it, it'll be on the multiple choice and you'll have to. What did that end up being, though, for those who did simplify? Negative 15 over 4. Perfect. Letter B. They did not, that wouldn't have been a source of complaint, but it says find the x coordinate of each critical point. That's AB again, right? Critical points occur where, the derivative is equal to 0. A fraction can't equal 0 unless the numerator is 0. This was a negative 3. I think this was 4x minus 7. Was that right? Okay. So you would have gone back to your part A and said, what would make my derivative 0? 7/4. Okay, that's the only critical value in that. So at x equals 7/4. Then it says, classify each as a relative min or max. And again, that's not about this chapter, but you need to be able to work with stuff like all mixed. So, yep.
Do I need to find the y coordinate? It's critical point.
It says the x coordinate though.
Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, if it didn't say that, you sure would. And they won't give it to you. If it just said critical point, then you would need the point. So anyway, if you did find that though, you won't lose points. Then it says classify it as maxes or mins. What do we do for that? For relative extrema. Yep. You make a sign line. What do you do for absolute extrema while we're at it? Make a table. What goes on your table while we're at it? And points and. Awesome. All right. reason I discussed that, you'll find me doing that a lot this semester. I want some of you to up your AB subscore. So that even if you, well, all of you passed it last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but some maybe had a 3 and your college requires a 4. So I want to make sure we all leave here with 4s or 5s on your AB subscore. So you get that credit as well. Make sense? All right. So what do we put on our sign line for F prime? 7/4 is where there might have been a turning point or a plateau, right? Because it says or neither. So I don't know yet. I'm going to see if it turns by plugging something into my derivative that's to the left. I like 0, right? And when I put in a 0, I think I ended up with was it a negative over a negative? Yes. Yeah, so it ended up being positive over here. And then maybe throw in a 10. You're just looking for signs, so do something nice. Did it stay positive or go negative? All right. If it stayed positive, what would you have written? Neither, because the derivative didn't change sign. It means it was going up. The function was going up and continued to go up, right? So this is the function was going up and then turned and went down. So we don't have our sign line as our reasoning though. Remember that from last year? I'm kind of reiterating that for Thomas too. That I don't know if you know that you can't have your sign line be your justification. You have to use words. So you would say there is a relative max because F prime. Yes, we can't say change the signs. So if you did that, you would have lost that. You wouldn't have earned that because we could negative to positive change the signs as well, right? So for the men, so make sure you know how to word that. This is the one that I'm doing this one for. All right, letter C and D. All of a sudden they're going, oh, easy AB. Pretty easy AB. And then they were like, what was up with the second part of number 5? So I want you to read it. What skill is it testing that we've done in here for letter C? Derivatives, critical values, quotient rule, relative extrema, and then what? It's still not this chapter. What's that called when we have a limit? Improper integral. So that's BC. It went improper integral. Let's go do it together. Okay? I'm going from 5 to infinity of, and they decomposed it for you. So they could have added decomposition to this problem, but then it would have been too long. So they're probably like, oh, we'll test that in multiple choice. Let's just decompose for them. All right. So that's what you're integrating. What do you think one of the points on the scoring rubric is for? What do we do with these improper integrals? I said, you're not going to like it, you have to do it or you're not going to earn all the points. You have to pass to the limit notation. If you don't, and you treat infinity as a number and just go through and integrate and then plug in infinity, you will just lose the point on here that says proper limit notation. So if you're like, it's not worth the point to me. But since you know how, we take the limit as what happens. B goes to infinity. This so far isn't much of an issue, right? What are we going to integrate from? 5 to B, and then we're going to just integrate as normal. But there's something that happened on this one where they came back and they were discussing. Half of the kids had one answer and the other had another answer. You're going to see what half of them did. All right. Now what skill are they going to cross off up here? This is hitting lots of those. You have to know everything. You get tested on everything up on that board. Right now, what skill is it? The antiderivative. That passes off to who? Natural log check. Okay? Also, use of technically. Check. Right? So here's what a lot of kids would have done this here. Limit B approaches infinity. 2 can come out front, right? They just went like this, I bet. Natural log. Fraction correction. U equals 2x minus 5. Du is 2dx, 1/2. Right? And remember, take its derivative to check it. Take the time if you have time. Go, okay, the derivative is u prime over u. So that'd be 2 over this. And then I double it and I got 4. Uh-oh, I forgot my fraction correction. See, it'll trigger it. Right? So just little tips of the tricks of the trade here. All right, that's good. Minus what? ln x minus 1. No fraction correction needed, but if it was 1 minus x, it'd be a plus. All right, we're good with that, right? And I'm integrating from 5 to b. 5 to b. I didn't change my limits because I went back to x. Okay? Now, this is where they goofed up. Half the kids came back saying, what'd you get? And they said, well, this goes to infinity, this goes to infinity, and infinity minus infinity is 0. And half of them came back and said, well, it was just 0. And the other one was like, well, I got a weird, who's right? The zeros or I got a weird answer. The weird answer's right. What's infinity minus infinity?
0.
Not 0. It's an indeterminate form. So is infinity divided by infinity? I don't know. It depends on how farther along you are. If you're exactly, you know what I mean? It's a destination. So what do I do with that? Yes, now it's going to a pre-calc skill. What is it, Luce? Yes. You're going to have to divide it. Remember, when we don't, you know you're going to need to do something with it when you get infinity minus infinity. So I know I'm writing kind of messy, but that's okay. So I know I'm going to have to do 2 times the natural log, right? Of what?
When he dropped in, we were
Oh yeah, the 2 got killed off with the fraction correction. Sorry. Sorry. So I'm going to do 2x minus 5 on the top. And then what'd you say, Luce? X minus 1 on the bottom. Perfect. It's still my limit. I'm still going from 5 to b. Then what? Then what? The b goes in, and you send it to infinity. You don't really have to write that down. You can probably do that in your head. Remember, b is the new x in that chapter. N is the new x in this chapter. But when I have 2b minus 5 over b minus 1 and its limit, right? It's like 2x minus 5 over x minus 1. What's the limit? 2. That's ln 2. Go ahead and write it down. Right? That's ln 2. It's technically L'Hopital's rule, but you don't need to, we've discussed that. You don't need to launch into L'Hopital when it's the obvious. All right, minus, so we have ln 2 minus ln what? 5/4. Can you leave that?
Yes.
Yes, what's it going to say on the key? It's going to say that, and then it's going to say equals. Because you could do 2 divided by 5/4, so it's probably going to say ln 8/5 at the very end. But don't do that. If you screw it up, what happens? You don't lose the point. All right, we got it. Perfect. I'm going to show you the scoring guidelines later so you can see where they're earned. Now watch this chapter insert itself. Now we're on series. I want you to do that on your own. Determine whether that converges or divergent. State the conditions. That's why I've been making you write them out, right? You need to know them. Whatever test you pick, you better know the conditions, or you won't get the point. That's on your test tomorrow. How are you going to determine if it converges or diverges? What test are you going to do? And then I'll tell you what most people chose and what a very clever choice was. So from yesterday, think of your parting C, think of all your tests. And what does this one trigger? I know we're reviewing for a test on series, and I just talked 10 minutes about things that weren't series, but those are the most important topics we have, aren't they, Diddy? Yeah, how does it all mix together? Otherwise you go into that AP exam and you're like, what in the world? That's an awful feeling. You know what those kids do? When you can tell when it happens, guess what they do in their test booklet? They don't leave it blank. They doodle, they draw, they write poems, they write song lyrics. They're so bored and they have an hour and a half, and I've had booklets come across with the whole thing. It's just like one long rant about how awful their teacher was. It's kind of funny. No, I don't. Well, you kind of get graded on how fast you read and how accurate you sound. Kind of fun. You have to skim them because they say that if there's like suicidal stuff in it. plenty of time, especially if you chose the clever way. What most kids see when they see it out of this problem, they look at that and see which test. LCT. Mm-hmm. Then that's totally, it's right, and it works quick. LCT, okay? Compared to the sum 1 over n squared, a known convergent p-series. They didn't require p equal 2 on this, but sometimes you don't know what they require. All right? And so when you compare it, then you'd be taking the limit as n approaches infinity, right? Of what you get when you divide them, multiply by the reciprocal. What does it equal? 3/2, which is, there we go, therefore. Anyone think of another way? Yes? Yeah, there's always one clever person. That's clever. For the integral test, it also has to converge. Why? Because we just found the integral. Right? And it, right. Yes. What would you have had to state, though? There was a condition to that. Mm-hmm. The integral test, but the danger with that is, what if you did your integral wrong? It's not very good. Right, then it's not going to fit. So be careful. Because a lot of kids would conclude diverges. Because they had that infinity minus infinity, and they're like, what? There's infinities, and then it diverges by the integral test. So be careful with that. Did you get that one right? Yeah. That's the one that I really wanted to do, but then I saw how great these other ones were, and I'm like, I got to discuss the whole big thing. All right. So what's up for the rest of the hour before I turn that off and let you work for the last good half hour or more? 2 things. All right. You don't have to do either. What's the one thing yesterday, though, because I know you were gone full, what's the one thing I said everybody probably should do to prepare for the test tomorrow?
Watch a video.
No, those are optional.
Stuff highlighted things.
Yes. Go through your notes and look at what's highlighted, because I'm telling you, I'm testing you exactly on that kind. All right? So just kind of look through your notepad.
Problems to do.
No, this isn't homework.
Oh,
This is for discussion purposes and practice if you need it.
perfect.
This is deadly. Because some people think, oh, she's not collecting anything. I'm not going to do anything.
Gunner, let's do
But it
it.
doesn't matter. Your homework's only worth 10%. I want your test grade to be 80. Tests are 90%. Then 80, they were 80. I think.
Yeah. That's a bump up.
Because I give you guys all the keys. So I'm not really concerned about that homework. So the first one I want to talk about is the one that says equal them on the top of it. This I got from my son's calculus book. Alright? And this was their series. Keep in mind they spent half the amount of time on it. And there's some on here that aren't like ones we need to know. I'll tell you what those are. 14, 17, 23. Alright? You don't really need to know how to do those. Which one do you need? Singleton or packet? Alright. So let's discuss the first 2 rows. Those are very indicative of. First row, what test? Nth term test 4? There you go. If you know how to do that, don't practice that one. If you're like, I can write that. Don't do it. Number 2, look at it and ask yourself, do I know what test I'd run? And if your answer is yes, and if you're like, do I know all the criteria of that test? You're like, I think so, but don't do it. So let's ask, we're just going to ask ourselves the first 2 rows. Number 2, what test would I use? There's no alternator. What? Oh, she was looking at 4. Then you're right. I'll come back to you. Number 2, she went down. I get it. I've been paying 10 years. Number 2. But I said it nicely. Yes, LCT. To who? The divergent harmonic. Perfect. Do you know what you need to conclude with the LCT? Finite positive. Well, excellent. Number 3, I'm looking at it and I'm like,
I don't like this.
I like number 3 set up perfectly for a direct comparison. It's going to ride under no matter what. 1 over n squared. Because the denominator's bigger. That somebody asked me that yesterday, like, what's the difference? I said, it has to be set. Was that you? You. I said, DCT you don't use very often unless it's in your face under a known convergent, which that is. Or over a known divergent. All right. Number 4, Lucy. Yes. And if you're like, I don't remember how to write that one, then go study it. All right, let's look at number 5. It will go geometric once you fart around with it. Okay, you love it when I say that. I just get massage. All right, number 6. See which is better. Number 6. What test? Right. Set up perfectly. And last of this discussion, perhaps, but this is kind of fun. Number 7. Integral. What's your trigger? Yeah, natural log and it. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. You might say, well, I'm going to do a direct comparison. You're going to struggle because that's under a divergent.
I always struggle.
No, you don't. She's teasing. She hasn't. Be proud of yourself. Number 8. What test? Even though it's K's, so what? Ratio.
Yes.
All right. Are we good? So, and some of these are a little weird, but for most part, we discussed all of them and then some. Who's missing on here that the U of M